In the name of the God who urgently and dearly loves us, our Creator, our Redeemer, and the Spirit. Amen. Good morning. It's great to be with you this morning. I am full of delight and also full of thanksgiving for two things particularly. First of all, for the invitation to be here and for the years that you have been good Sams in this part of the world. It is something of a personal dream and prayer come true to be here, because how long ago was that, Rita? 30 years ago or something like that. We were both 12 at the time. So, and I was the chair of a committee to start some new congregations in the Diocese of Indianapolis. And so we did one up in Fishers, and none of us even knew where that was. And then, a couple down in the south and one on the south side. You remember all that? And then we bought some land up, was that on 56th Street, wherever it was, and a little house on it and that sort of thing. And it started, and then it didn't start, and then it didn't work quite, and that sort of thing. And I learned that God will do what God will do in God's season and God's time. And Jimmy, you sit back and watch and pray about it. Isn't that a good thing to learn? 30 years later, there you are. You have done it, and I am full of thanksgiving for that. And also full of thanksgiving for the kind of congregation you are. The wonderful announcements this morning, what we see around you here, that is a wonderful identity, a mission to carry in the world, especially in this urgent time. And I'm going to end up talking about urgency later on. It is so important amidst the challenges we face to be about service and welcome, service and welcome, service and welcome. You're doing that. And boy, oh boy, I am thankful, because in this time of challenge, this time of possibility, this time when you don't know what's going to happen next in our society or in our world, the time when you don't know how much the gasoline is going to cost you at the pump even, we need Good Sams. We need St. John's. We need communities that come together at tables like this, and by the magic of video, the table can be taken to many places. We need communities of faith to say, wait, this is about serving, this is about loving, this is about welcoming. Also about a little more recent than that, I'd come back from a general convention of the Episcopal Church. At that point, I was the dean of a seminary up in Chicago. And we'd been doing a lot of work, and it had been a very tough one. And a very dear friend of mine, a guy named Gene Robinson, just got beat up all over the place. He was a man, a very faithful priest, very creative soul, who had been elected a bishop, but he was gay, and the fight followed. So I was tired. And I came back home, and here was my middle daughter, Anna, and two of her friends doing some project at the dining room table. And I was really delighted, because Anna was 13, and guess what she did? She acknowledged me walking into the room. Dad, you're home. Well, I thought, that's great, isn't it? I gave a hug, and then one of the girls said, where was your dad? And she said, oh, he was at this thing I don't understand called the General Convention of the Church, and, he's a priest. And the Roman Catholic girl said, huh? I've never understood that. You said that before, Anna, but I don't get that. How does that work anyway? So Anna thought for a moment and said, well, we're the Episcopal Church. And the Jewish girl sitting at the table said, and this had been when we were all over the newspapers and the news at night and, having a fight as the Episcopal Church. The Jewish girl then said, oh, the Episcopal Church, I've heard of them. They're that church that welcomes everyone, aren't they? Whoa. I am thankful that you are a church that welcomes everyone, that we are a church that welcomes everyone. That is who we are called to be. Now, as far as the gospel goes for today that you just heard, I had to go down deeper into my gut and my soul to be really thankful for that. What a gospel, huh? What a story. Coming back to Indianapolis 6 years ago, I get to serve in a foundation that gives resources to arts organizations and humanities organizations. I've always loved art. Had I known you needed a pianist today, I would have joined you all, as a matter of fact. Hey, next time, maybe. So I love icons. I love the paintings and of all kinds of eras and so forth, of Jesus particularly and what he looks like. And so you see Jesus, the Redeemer, the resurrection from the grave. You see Jesus, the compassionate one, healing. You see Jesus in the arms of his mother, the beloved child. You see Jesus. We had a great stained glass window at the parish in Connecticut I retired from that was Jesus welcoming the little children. I love all of those, but I have to tell you, I have never seen any artistic form of the cranky Jesus. And guess who we meet today? A bad hair day cranky Jesus. Now, he has good reason for that. His disciples have sort of missed the point on some things. He's now said, we're going to go to Jerusalem and we're going to welcome people and I'm going to heal people and big things are going to happen in Jerusalem. That's why it says it in the gospel. I like one translation that said, he resolutely set his face towards Jerusalem. He was a man on a mission. But his disciples, something bad happens, so they say about the folks they don't like very much, oh, Jesus, let us use our power and call down hail and fire and storm on them. Wouldn't that be good? Are you kidding me, says Jesus. And then this is the thing that shows how cranky he really is. Some people want to follow him, and he says, and one of them says, oh, I have to go bury my dad first. And he says, no time for that. And another one says, I've got to go back and plow the field so that my family has enough to eat. And he says, no, we can't do that. So I ask you, was he just having a bad day? Was this the cranky Jesus that we usually don't sing carols about on Christmas Eve? Who was this guy? Well, I believe that the point of this difficult encounter and set of encounters has to do with the urgency of love and the urgency of the gospel itself. The reading from the Hebrew scriptures that we heard had another prophet who could be really cranky. I won't get into Elijah and how cranky that guy could be. But he let someone who wants to follow him go back and bury his father, go back and kiss his family. But Jesus is saying here, you know what? This is so urgent. God's love is so urgent. God's welcome is so urgent. God's service is so urgent. God's sacrificial compassion is so urgent that everything else is secondary to it. Remember, Jesus liked hyperbole, as was the case in the Middle East generally. I remember being on an airplane one time going to the Holy Land, and we ended up in the front of the plane for a couple of reasons that was just sheer grace. And we were the only Gentiles there, and everyone else was a Jewish person who was getting ready to say the prayers of the morning and put their prayer shawls on and do that sort of thing. It was wonderful to see. But we were so close to Tel Aviv that the monitor came across and the pilot said something, every time you get ready to land, please remain in your seats with your seat belts completely fastened because, and then said it again. No one did anything. They just kind of kept milling about and that sort of thing. And then in Hebrew though, and so I didn't understand it. I know some biblical Hebrew, but I'm not so good on airplanes. In Hebrew he says, and everyone sits down laughing. So I said to the guy sitting next to me, what did he say? He said, well, I'll tell you what he said. He said, do you people want to die? Sit down. Well, that's the hyperbole of the Middle East. That's what Jesus is doing here. He's using hyperbole. He's using exaggeration in order to make the point that, as I said, and I'll say it again, God's love is urgent. God's welcome is urgent. God's sacrificial compassion is absolutely urgent. Dwight Eisenhower, President of the United States, the great general of the Second World War, couldn't figure out, both when he was a general and when he was a president of the United States, how he should prioritize or figure out what to do with all this stuff around him. How do you defeat Hitler? That's kind of a small thing to think about, isn't it? How do you begin a way of moving from the war into a peacetime when there was, guess what? Inflation. How do you start to have a just and civil society, especially for people of the black race who have been betrayed and oppressed for so long? How do you do that? So what do you do first? And he came up with a great saying. He said, you know, all of us in whatever we do have to remember and make the distinction between what is urgent and what is important. And our life is full of both. Most of us spend time on the important things, don't we? We get up in the morning and say, it's important that we do this today. It's important that we get that done. Most congregations do that too. You ever go to a vestry meeting? Oh, they have a bishop's committee. Bishop's committee meeting, yeah. There are important things to deal with. But Eisenhower said, yeah, do those, but somehow swim through it and get to that which is urgent. And he did that in his presidency, and he did that in the way in which the Second World War was won, finally. Wow. Now, I'm not sure I'm so good at that. I try to deal with important things on a daily basis. In my life, in my family, in the work that I do, in being an ordained person, but more importantly, a baptized person in the life of the church. But I get stuck. And I lose sight of that which is urgent. And then somehow through prayer, somehow through colleagues, somehow through learning, I can see it and say, yes, this is urgent. We must go this way now. You know what? You do know what. This is an urgent moment, isn't it? This is an urgent moment for our world, where all kinds of horrible things are happening to people, where there are more refugees than there have ever been before. It's an urgent moment for us to respond to that. This is an urgent moment for our society, and I don't even know what to say about all that. How do we affirm and defend democracy? How do we affirm and defend, as we say in our baptismal covenant, that we will respect the dignity of every human being? That, by God, is urgent. That's not just important. That is urgent. How does a congregation do that? How does a congregation say, we've got to make these decisions, there are lots of important things that we're doing, but what is really urgent about how God is calling us right now, who we are to be? Because there are always fun things to do, like calling a new vicar. Isn't that fun? Yeah, it is fun, but also it's a big decision. It is an urgent matter. Or St. John's doing such wonderful Zoom worship, doing visits like this. Isn't that a great a sign of solidarity in diocesan life? It doesn't happen very often, but it does. St. John's does it with regularity. Because that's urgent. Figuring out who you are, where you're going to go, how you make welcome, and service real and manifest all the time. And then finally, think about your own life for a moment. There are important things to do. But maybe this week, breathe into your spirit place and ask yourself the question, what's really urgent in my life right now? I find in my life those things, that the urgency can sometimes get lost because there's so much to do, or can get denied because I really don't want to deal with that stuff anyway. You ever have that happen in your life? But God says, what is urgent to you and to the goodness of your well-being, the goodness of your soul and your life? Now, the great thing about urgency is that we never face it alone. That's what the psalm essentially for today is saying. The companionship of God, the community of people being together, the inspiration of that Spirit that flows and blows and keeps on going inspires us and strengthens us to see the urgent and to respond to it. Oh, yes, it is important that we care for our family and attend the family funerals, for heaven's sake. Oh, yes, it is important that we figure out how we're going to have a livelihood and that we're faithful and honest and effective. Yes, it's important that we're good citizens. Yes, it's important that we come to bishops' committee meetings and vestry meetings and all that sort of thing. But there's something urgent right now in your life that God is bringing to your heart and to your attention. And God says, "Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the ages. Lo, I am with you always, especially in the most urgent time." Amen.